And it's almost looking like a voodoo now. And it seems like no matter what Arsenal does, they never seem to get the better of Manchester City. I mean, they can beat them in a one-off match, but when it has to do with winning the title over them, it looks near impossible these days. And it was obvious from the way Arsenal approached the game that they did not believe in themselves enough to win the match. They came to defend. They came and they packed the bus. There were 10 players behind the ball. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Football Slides TV. My name is Goodness Eze, and in this video we would be looking at Arsenal and Manchester City, specifically Mikel Arteta and Pep Guardiola. And if you're new here, do well to like the video, subscribe to this channel, and click on the notification bell so that you get notified when we drop new content on the Football Slides TV. Mikel Arteta and Pep Guardiola have a long-standing history together. They first met at La Masia, the Barcelona academy, when Mikel Arteta was a youth product and Pep Guardiola was already an established member of the squad. And they built a very good relationship with each other. They agreed that they would, keep in touch over the course of their careers. Of course, Pep Guardiola got into management before Mikel Arteta got into management, while Mikel Arteta was still a footballer. Just before Arteta finished his career, he agreed to join the coaching staff of Manchester City, while Pep Guardiola was, of course, about to be appointed as the manager of Manchester City. And of course, Mikel Arteta joined Guardiola at City. They won 2 Premier League titles together just before Mikel Arteta was appointed by Arsenal to replace Unai Emery. And I would say Mikel Arteta has had a largely successful reign, as Arsenal manager. His first season, he finished 8th and won the FA Cup, also winning the Community Shield in the beginning of the next season. He also finished 8th that season, and then he finished 5th in the following season. And then the past 2 seasons, he has finished 2nd, of course, finishing 2nd to Manchester City. But it looks like no matter how hard Arsenal try, they never seem to get the better of Manchester City. 2 seasons ago, while they were, in contention for the title with Manchester City, Mikel Arteta tried every means to beat City, and they could not beat City. Now, last season, they were able to beat City, beating them 1-0 at the Emirates Stadium earlier in the season. But it was still not enough for Mikel Arteta to win the Premier League title over Pep Guardiola. And it's almost looking like a voodoo now. And it seems like no matter what Arsenal does, they never seem to get the better of Manchester City. I mean, they can beat them in a one-off match, but when it has to do with winning the title over them, it looks near impossible these days. So Arsenal fans, come. Let's talk about how Mikel Arteta can actually get the better of Pep Guardiola, not just in a one-off game, but over the course of the 38-game Premier League season. If you're in for that kind of thing, hop on it. After studying both teams, I realized that there are 2 major things that stand in the way of Arsenal toppling Manchester City as Premier League champions. And the first one is to fix the mentality. Many footballers, many football pundits, many managers talk about how important mentality is in football. So sometimes we feel it has become a cliche. However, one of the most important things in football, in fact, sometimes even more important than the skill of the footballer, is the mentality. Manchester City's midfielder Rodri, moments after lifting the Premier League title in the just concluded season, said to the media, and what he said was a very, very important quote. It caused controversy in some quarters. But for me, I feel it's the major reason why Arsenal so far have not been able to topple Manchester City and win the Premier League title. Here is what he said. He said, to be honest, I think it's in here. It's the mentality. Arsenal also, they deserve to win the league. They did an unbelievable season, but I think the difference was in here. When they came here, they faced us at the Etihad. I saw them and said, these guys, they don't want to beat us. They just want a draw. Now, when Rodri said this, a lot of people, called him out and said he was being disrespectful to Arsenal. But I feel it's very important. Now, let's cast our minds back earlier in the season. Arsenal came to the Etihad Stadium, Manchester City's home stadium, to take on Manchester City. And it was obvious from the way Arsenal approached the game that they did not believe in themselves enough to win the match. They came to defend. They came and they packed the bus. There were 10 players behind the ball, everybody defending for their lives. It showed that Arsenal never really saw themselves being able to go toe-to-toe with Manchester City, play them at their game, and defeat them in their stadium. And now Rodri is saying that if he was in their shoes, he's sure that Manchester City would not go to Arsenal Stadium and play for a draw. I mean, look at those fine margins. If something as little as that could give Manchester City the edge and they feel that they have the mentality to defeat Arsenal in the title race, it's more important than the skill of the players themselves. And this is the reason why Manchester City, they go out to play teams and they totally play them off the park. Now, take for instance, in the Champions League, Manchester City played Real Madrid in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Real Madrid won the match on penalties and they eventually won the Champions League title. However, if you watch the game, you know that Manchester City put Real Madrid under enormous amount of pressure. I was joking and I said, any team that plays Manchester City needs to go for a therapy because there is so much pressure they put you under. And I tell you, more than the skill of the players, more than the expertise of the coach, it's about the mentality of the players. They know that they can beat anybody in the world. And until Arsenal get that into their head, that they can beat Manchester City, they are capable of beating Manchester City, they would not really be able to win the league. They can park the bus and play on the counter-attack and grab a goal, just like they did at Emirates last season. However, the mentality shift that would give Manchester City, just like Rodri said, is enormous, and it's enough to guide them to the title. Another very good example of this was how Manchester United defeated Manchester City in the FA Cup final. In a very brilliant journalistic work by The Athletic, they were able to explain how Erik ten Hag galvanized his team to take on Manchester City and beat them in the FA Cup final. He said that among the things Erik ten Hag did for the team, they played a video showing the good things that Manchester United did in the game against Manchester City. The game where Erik ten Hag brought that video from, they lost that game. But he specifically worked with his team and brought out snippets of the game where Manchester United played football like a proper team. And he showed it to them before the game, just to put it in their head that you guys are actually capable of beating this. The moment he was able to put that in their head, they came out to the pitch at Wembley and they played with so much confidence, beating Manchester City and winning the FA Cup final. So, Mikel Arteta, come. I'm telling you, if you want to beat Manchester City, fix the mentality. Let your players know that they are capable of winning the league ahead of Pep Guardiola's Manchester City. The second thing Arsenal should do to topple Manchester City in the title race is to sign better players. Now, trust me, Arsenal has one of the best teams in the league, if not the best. You know, they have some of the best players in the world, like Declan Rice in midfield, like Bukayo Saka on the right wing. You know, they have the likes of William Saliba, the likes of Gabriel, great players littered all over the pitch. This may even be part of what I talked about in the first point, talking about the mentality. But Arsenal have perfected this way of always going to sign players that not just the whole world, but even they themselves, if they are honest with themselves, know that they are inferior to Manchester City's players. For instance, why would you go and sign Zinchenko to be your left back, your starting left back in the team, and you signed him off Manchester City? Do you think Manchester City would actually sell their best players to you? No. They sold Zinchenko because he was surplus to requirements. The same with Gabriel Jesus. They sold him because he was surplus to requirements. And the point I'm trying to make is, Arsenal cannot defeat Manchester City in the title race by signing rejected players from Manchester City. Arteta and the Arsenal backroom staff have to go out in the transfer window and actually buy players that are either better than City's players currently or have a higher ceiling than them. Because currently, how many Arsenal players would start in Manchester City squad at the moment? You argue none. The only person that may have just a little chance of starting is probably Declan Rice or Bukayo Saka. Those are the only players. There are no other players in the Arsenal squad that would start in Manchester City squad. I said that to say that Arsenal should go out into the transfer window and identify players that are better than Manchester City's players. Now, they shouldn't just go to the transfer window and say, oh, who is the player that elevates the floor of our team now? No, they should actually go to the transfer window and say, who are the players in the transfer window currently that elevates the floor of our team but are also better than our counterparts? They should go out and get the best players in the world, just like they did when they signed Declan Rice from West Ham. It was a lot of money, but Declan Rice was one of the best players in his position, if not the best. So Arsenal need to go out and buy better players than Manchester City players. Only then can they start to go toe-to-toe with Manchester City and eventually topple them in the title race. If Mikel Arteta and Arsenal are able to do these two things, I can tell you Manchester City will have an even tougher time trying to get Arsenal out of their way. Already Arsenal have a very formidable team, and if they do these two things, if they fix these two things, I tell you, it's a matter of time before we see Arsenal lifting the Premier League title again. That's all for this video. If you have enjoyed it, do well to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it to your friends and family, your fellow football lovers. Tell them to come and join the Football Slides TV. And like I said, there's so much more content coming to you, so make sure you click on the notification button so that you can be notified when we drop new content on the Football Slides TV. My name remains Goodness Eze. See you on the next video.